Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all an update to my future card Buddyfight Zwei deck profile for post-Buddy Ragnarok. With the release of the latest set, we were given a new form of Ozzy Dahaka Revival Buddy, so definitely wanted to update the deck with all the new cards and number ratios I've changed since the last Zwei deck profile, and hoping to continue on with a bunch of other decks from post-Buddy Ragnarok for Buddyfight, just updating everyone wanting to see different decks that I have for the channel as well. This is a really fun deck. For those of you that don't know, Zwei focuses on having 20 life at the beginning of the game, unlike other decks that focus on, live around 10, and also having the fact that you can only use monsters in this deck for the true powerhouse that is getting out your main boss monster, which is Ozzy Dahaka and all his many forms. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Buddy monster, I run the new Great Demonic and Dragon Ozzy Dahaka Revival Buddy for my buddy of choice, just being the new boss monster of the deck, being one, very difficult to get over power-wise, being able to have multiple attacks, and with this number, I've decided to run 3 of this card for my buddy, just because I wanted to run a good number of all the other different Ozzy Dahakas in the deck for Zwei. With this card, you may only call this card if your flag is Zwei or Dragon Dry, so you're not limited to, when you can call this card out. Even if your flag is Dragon Dry, you still have the option of using this card, and the call cost is put a monster from your field into the drop zone and pay 2 gauge, so a very, very affordable cost as well for a true boss monster, standing at 20,000 power, 20,000 defense, and 3 critical. And if this card would be leave the field, you may drop a hand card up to 2. You have to drop 2 hand cards, remember that. If you do, this card remains on the field, and its counter is you may pay 2 life if you do stand this card. So along with having double attack, you can always just pay the 2 life to restand Ozzy Dahaka again and attack with 3 critical, and the fact that it also has penetrate makes it a very, very scary card to go up against your opponent, and these, power numbers can hit a good amount of different cards your opponent may have in their arsenal as well. So you definitely want to run 3 of this, working all the stronger with our other Ozzy Dahakas, which we run in the deck, which are 3 Great Demonic Blackluster Dragon Ozzy Dahaka If. With this one having the move and triple attack aspect, if it takes out all monsters on your opponent's field, you're also able to drop their gauge, their life, and destroy additional cards on the field. And also being able to call this card from your drop zone without paying its call cost if you are transformed into a Gaian item. Very, very scary for sure when you're transformed to Gaian, just being able to call out Ozzy Dahaka, being able to move it to defend yourself. Having 12,000 defense makes it very formidable, just like our Revival Buddy here. But the biggest part of it comes in the fact that you can drain away your opponent's resources very early game as well if they don't have that much set up on their field to use. And the final of the Ozzy Dahakas that we run in the deck are 3 Mark of Atonement, Ozzy Dahaka, Die of Assist. For the call cost, you put 2 monsters from your field into the drop zone and pay 3 gauge. When this card is destroyed, you draw a card, and if your flag is Dragon Zwei, put up to 1 Dragon Dry from your hand or deck on top of your flag and shuffle your deck. If you do, you gain 5 life. So it basically is a faster way for you to call out your Dragon Dry flag and then be able to gain the additional life that you would have normally with your Dragon Dry flag if your life would become 0. Just a faster way to incorporate it, giving you draw power as well. It's the setup card. It has triple attack and penetrate, and just as scary as the other Ozzy Dahakas, but this one's more of a setup play than the actual monsters you'll want to call out later on. And I also run 3 of the Dragon Dry flag. Either you call this card out or place this card, better words for it, with your Mark of Atonement, Ozzy Dahaka, Die of Assist, or you can use it from your hand. When your life will become 0, you may put this card on top of your Dragon Zwei flag. If you do, put all cards on your field into the drop zone and your life becomes 5. So a great way to protect yourself when your life goes down to 0 by your opponent's attacks. It's that little extra life boost, so even if your opponent uses like an impact to finish you at 0 life, you have the option with this card to come back into the game, and if they used all the resource, one more turn to then use some of your other powerhouses in the deck, which are your Transform Gaia, which we run 3 Demonic Karma Dragon Deity of Black Luster, Gaia and If. With this one, another Transform card, reducing the size of all your Ozzy Dahakas on the field as well. Entering the field, you'll also draw 2 cards and limit your opponent by drawing by card effects during the next turn as well. With triple attack, 15,000 power, and a critical is a very, very scary monster to transform into once your flag is Dragon Dry, and a very easy transform cost of just having to pay 3 gauge, and then also being being able to defend against your opponent, having permanent 12,000 defense as an item on the field as well. For some of the added backup for the deck, I also run 4 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Destructor. With this one, during your turn, when this card enters the field, if your flag is Dragon Zwei, you may pay 2 life. If you do draw 2 cards, you may only use Finalizer once per turn. It's draw power. The biggest weakness with this one is just not having the life to pay it, and also the fact if you've already set up your flag to be Dragon Dry, then you can't use this card. But if that happens, it's always just a no-brainer, gauge cost card for me to set up. And I like relying on it for that early game draw power, while also just having the life to spare with this card, and also Azidahaka Revival Buddy for the stand power, life cost, and just overall draw power you can use. I also run 4 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Destructor Vargas, basically an evolved form of Destructor. With this one, you may only call this card once per turn. When it enters the field, put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and if your flag is Dragon Zwei, you draw a card. If your flag is Dragon Dry, you draw 2 cards, being an added bonus if your flag is Dragon Dry, meaning you have the draw power set up for your Destructor early on, but being able to make use of Vargas anytime means you can call Destructor and Vargas during the same turn, but late game, having more copies of this card just makes it that much better because you'll draw 2 cards along with your gauge setup also. And for more search power for some of the specific Azidahakas, I also run the 4 Spawn of the Demonic Dragon, Abyssgate. When it enters the field, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your gauge, put up to 1 Dragon Throne or size 3 Gator monster with Azidahaka and its card name from your deck into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So it sets up gauge for your Azidahaka, but being able to search out any of the particular ones you run, whether it's Die of Assist, If, or even the new Revival Buddy, you have equally powerful search options with this card available to you. So it's a great powerhouse for sure, and also just being able to set up some of our other cards in our drop zone, which would work much better for them, including our Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Giltar. This one, it's great in the drop zone. When you put a card with Gaia or Dragon Dry from your name drop zone into your hand, you may use this ability once per turn. So you basically have that set up to grab either Dry or your Transform Gaian into your hand to use late game. But during the drop zone counter during attack on your opponent's turn, if your flag is Dragon Zwei or Dry, you may put this card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. If you do, pay 1 gauge to nullify the attack and gain 2 life. A good way to stop attacks against your opponent and them not seeing it coming if Giltar is set up in your drop zone. I only run the 3 though. We have other options to stop the attacks, and other than that, you can only recycle Dry and Gaia so much until they just become like gauge use, where you only need the 1 transform and the 1 Dry to make use of in the deck. But still great search power and recovery options also in case you go through or just gauge all of your different Dragon Dries. For more gauge setup, I run 4 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Bloody On. When it enters the field, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your drop zone, put any number of monsters from among them into your gauge, which are the majority of cards in this deck. The one thing would be the Dragon Dry. If you drop that card, you'll miss out on that, but still be able to recycle it back with your Giltar. The Bloody On is just the gauge setup because this deck can easily eat away at gauge, whether you call out Azidahaka or use your Gaian transformation. They both have pretty high gauge costs, so Bloody On at 4 is a great option, so you always have the cost to basically build up for the gauge you'll need. I also run the 3-time General Tobuscus with this one. You may drop this card from your hand. If you do, gain 3 life. But the real importance of this card comes from the drop zone, being able to choose a card in your opponent's field. You may destroy a monster on your field if you put this card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. If you do, destroy the chosen card. So you'll be able to destroy your opponent's card, but depending on what card you destroy, like Die of Assist, you can then gain access to Dragon Dry, destroying your Azidahaka on your own, gaining the fact that you destroy an opponent's card, and also set up your Dragon Dry play without them having to attack into your Die of Assist. I also run 2 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Rados. With this one, if your flag is Dragon Zwei or Dry, you may drop this card from your hand. If dropped this turn, all cards on your field with Dragon and their attributes cannot be destroyed or returned to hand, and their abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effect. So the biggest thing with this deck is attacking with Azidahaka, and your opponent tries to take them out, either by destroying them or bouncing them back to your hand. So Radon as a hand card to rely on means that you can go for your attack with no fear against your opponent. The only thing you'll have to stop you and worry about is if they, stop your attack. But Radon and the multiple Azidahaka attacks you'll have make it that much scarier of your setup to go through. I also run 2 Style of Impact Ball Dragon, more gauge setup with this one, just being able to pay a life to call it out, saving your gauge for its call cost, paying a life, and just setting up more gauge for you to use. 4 other cards, including 3 Ruler of the Battle Zone Abigail. Just like Giltar, this is just a great card in the drop zone for discard cost with some of your other cards like a Biscuit, setting it up for you to be able to stop your opponent's attacks. 3 of this means you always have the option for it to mill it off with Bloody on. You name it, you'll be able to protect yourself from your opponent's attacks no matter what, as long as this card's in the drop zone. A few more cards left. I have the 2 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Frovraga. You definitely want to run this at 4. I know it's a pretty pricey card at the moment. For added spots, I'm running 1 Spawn of the Demonic Dragon Booze and 1 Chaos Alberian for more setup with the drop zone and draw power and resources when sacrificed for Azidahaka. But the Frovraga being able to destroy cards for draw power as well means that you'll initiate your Azidahaka destruction play while also setting up draw power using this card, and the fact that it becomes a size 0 when you have Azidahaka on the field also. And lastly, I run the 2 Operative Sphere, more draw and gauge setup by having different worlds on the field, which can be easily done with this card being a Dragon World, monster, and also having Darkness Dragon World, Star Dragon World, Danger World, you name it, all ready to go in this deck also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I'm really enjoying making these Buddy Ragnarok deck profiles. We're hoping to work on a lot more from the set. If anyone has any requests on what they'd like to see next, I've got plenty to work on for sure, especially ones from the Ace series, if anyone's looking to see those cards. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.